Amidst the ashes of an arson tragedy, a millionaire mourns the loss of everything he loved most, including his 9-year-old son. But a street girl appears out of nowhere and reveals something impossible. My little brother didn't die, and I know who is behind the fire. Desperation gives way to a race against time to find the truth about his son and the street girl. What he discovers will change his destiny forever. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Tell us which city you're watching us from and we'll keep going. The sky over the capital was painted orange as Matteo Moretti surveyed the city from his office on the top floor of the imposing building that bore his name. The 45-year-old adjusted his Italian silk tie and took a deep breath, contemplating the empire he had built over the past 20 years. Moretti Empreendimentos had become the largest construction company in the country, with projects spread across all the country's major cities and an international expansion underway. Mr. Moretti, the meeting with foreign investors is scheduled for tomorrow at 9. All documents are ready for your review, announced Sophia Müller, his efficient assistant, as she entered the room carrying a black leather briefcase. Matteo just nodded, not looking away from the window. It was almost the night of his birthday, but for him, it was just another day. His cell phone vibrated for the third time in the last 10 minutes. It was Helena, the housekeeper of his mansion. "You can speak, Helena," he finally answered. "Mr. Matteo, Luca is asking if you'll come for dinner. He's prepared something special for your birthday and—" "I have a video conference with the Chinese in half an hour," Matteo said, feeling a pang of guilt that he quickly pushed away. "Tell him I'll be late, but I'll make up for it tomorrow." As he hung up, the image of his 9-year-old son waiting for him at the huge dining table flashed through his mind like a flash of lightning. Luca was an introverted boy with big, expressive eyes who had inherited his mother's gentleness. Isabel had died 6 years earlier, a victim of a fatal illness, leaving Matteo with a growing business empire and a small boy to raise alone. Sophia cleared her throat, bringing him back to reality. There's also this invitation from Luca's school. It looks like there's going to be a presentation next week. Matteo took the colorful envelope and put it inside the drawer. "Thank you, Sophia. You can go now." When he was alone, Matteo loosened his tie and poured himself a finger of whiskey. The amber liquid burned his throat as he thought about how many school presentations he had missed. Luca never complained. He just looked at him with those eyes that seemed to understand everything, even at such a young age. The truth was that Matteo didn't know how to be a father. After Isabel's death, he threw himself into work as a way to escape the pain. The more he worked, the more his company grew, and the more successful he became, the more distant he became from his son. It was a cycle he didn't know how to break. In the Moretti mansion, Luca sat on the floor of his bedroom surrounded by Lego pieces. He built a replica of the building where his father's office was located, with impressive accuracy for his age. "Luca, my dear, your father will be late," said Helena, watching the boy's creation with admiration. "But look at how beautiful this building you're making is." The boy remained focused on his work without showing any disappointment. "It's okay, Helena. Dad has a lot of work to do. The cake can stay in the fridge." The housekeeper felt a pang in her heart. She had helped raise Luca since he was a baby and loved him like a grandson. It was painful to see how the boy had become accustomed to his father's absence as if he had not expected anything different. "He wishes he were here, my dear." "I'm sure of it." Luca looked up from his project and smiled slightly. "I know. When he comes, I'll show him my building. I made it exactly like his." The next morning, Matteo arrived home, when Luca had already left for school. He found on the kitchen table a small package wrapped in colorful paper and a note written in his son's neat handwriting. "Happy birthday, Daddy. I love you so much." Inside the box was a photo of the two of them, taken years ago when Luca was still a baby, with Isabel smiling beside them. Matteo felt a lump in his throat. At the exclusive school he attended, Luca would walk alone through the courtyard during recess. Despite having studied there for years, he had few friends. He preferred the company of books and his constructions. "Hey, fatherless boy, shouted Eric, an older boy approaching with a group. "Where's your father?" "Oh, that's right, he prefers the buildings to you." Luca kept his eyes down, pretending not to hear, but the words hit him like stones. "Leave him alone, Eric," intervened Leah, a girl, the same age as Luca, with curly hair and a strong personality. "Look, the orphan got a girlfriend," Eric mocked, but he walked away with his group when a teacher approached. Leah sat down next to Luca on the bench. "Don't pay attention to him. He's an idiot." "I don't care," Luca lied. "I'm used to it." Leah attended school thanks to a full scholarship, earned for her excellent academic performance. She lived with her mother, Natalia, in a small apartment. Natalia worked as a nurse in a public hospital and raised her daughter alone since her husband abandoned her while she was pregnant. "Do you want to see what I brought?" asked Leah, trying to cheer up her colleague. She opened her backpack and revealed an architecture book full of photographs of famous buildings. "I got it from the public library near my house. I thought you might like it." Luca's eyes lit up for the first time that day. "That's amazing. Just look at the Burj Khalifa. Did you know it's 828 meters tall?" And so, for a few moments, Luca forgot the sadness of his lonely life, while sharing with Leah his passion for architecture, inherited from the father he barely saw. Meanwhile, at the Moretti Empreendimentos office, Matteo was receiving Stefan Braus, an old colleague from engineering school, who now ran a smaller but rapidly growing construction company. "Matteo, my old friend," Stefan exclaimed with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Every time I come here, your empire gets bigger." Matteo shook the visitor's hand firmly. "Stefan, it's been a while. What brings you here today?" "I came to propose a partnership," Stefan replied, settling into the chair in front of Matteo's desk. "I have an ambitious project on the North Coast, and I thought maybe we could join forces." Matteo studied the man in front of him. Stefan had been his classmate in college, but they had never really been friends. There was something in the other man's gaze that had always made him uncomfortable. "Send the details to my team to analyze," he replied with professional cordiality. "But I can already tell you that our schedule is very full for the next few months." Stefan smiled, a smile that seemed to hide something. Of course. Moretti Empreendimentos is the dream of any partnership. I heard you're celebrating your birthday today. Congratulations. And how is your son, Luca, right? He must be big." The mention of his son made Matteo suddenly alert. "Very well, thank you," he replied dryly. "Great. Family is everything in life, isn't it, Matteo?" Stefan said, his tone almost sounding like a threat. "Especially when it's all we have left." A tense silence hung between the two men. Stefan stood to leave. "I'll send the project today. Think carefully, Matteo. Some opportunities are unique, just like some people in our lives." After Stefan left, Matteo was disturbed, without understanding exactly why. There was something between the lines of that conversation that had left him uneasy. He picked up the phone and called home. "Helena, is Luca back from school yet?" "Yes, sir. He's in his room." "Tell him I'll be home early today." As he hung up, Matteo looked at the tower of papers on his desk. For the first time in a long time, he felt like there was something more important to do than work late. The rain was falling heavily on the capital when Matteo finally left his office. Traffic was chaotic, as it always was on stormy days. As his driver maneuvered the imported car through the flooded streets, Matteo tried to call home, but no one answered. "Tobias, they're not making any calls at home. Could you go a little faster?" he asked the driver, feeling an inexplicable uneasiness. "I'm trying, sir, but the streets are complicated today." Matteo looked at his watch, 9:40 p.m. He was indeed arriving earlier than usual, but for some reason he felt anxious. The conversation with Stefan Braus wouldn't leave his mind. There was something in his old colleague's tone, a veiled insinuation that disturbed him. When the car finally turned onto the driveway that led to the Moretti mansion, Matteo saw something that made his heart stop. Smoke was escaping from the windows on the second floor, where Luca's bedroom was. Without waiting for the car to come to a complete stop, he opened the door and ran toward the house. "Luca! Helena!" he shouted as he entered the mansion. The entrance hall was filled with thick smoke. Matteo ran up the stairs, but the intense heat prevented him from reaching the hallway that led to his son's room. "Mr. Moretti," it was one of the property's security guards who pulled him back. "It's dangerous. The firefighters are already arriving." "My son is up there," Matteo shouted, trying to free himself. Sirens were already wailing nearby. Within minutes, the mansion was surrounded by firefighters and ambulances. Matteo watched it all as if in a nightmare, as the firefighters tried to control the flames. He was taken to an ambulance where he was given oxygen while he continued to ask desperately for Luca and Helena. "Mr. Moretti," said a fireman, approaching with a serious expression, "we found 2 people, a woman and a boy." Matteo felt the world spin. At the hospital, doctors struggled to stabilize the fire victims. Matteo was pacing the waiting room when a police officer approached. "Mr. Moretti, I'm Detective Suarez. We need to ask you some questions about the incident." "Not now," Matteo interrupted without taking his eyes off the door where the doctors would enter with news. "I understand your concern, but the sooner we start the investigation, the better. We already have a team at your residence." Matteo looked at the man for the first time. "Investigation? It was an accident, wasn't it?" The investigator hesitated. "We cannot say anything yet, but there are elements that suggest that the fire may not have been accidental." Those words hit Matteo like a punch. Before he could respond, a doctor appeared, calling his name. "Mr. Moretti, your son is stable. He inhaled a lot of smoke, but we managed to stabilize him. He is sedated at the moment." Matteo felt his legs weaken with relief. "And Helena, the housekeeper? She is also stable, but with some burns. Both will remain hospitalized for observation." Matteo was led into the room where Luca was lying. The boy looked so small and fragile in the hospital bed, with an oxygen mask covering part of his face. Matteo held his son's hand, feeling guilty, for all the times he had not been there. "I'm sorry, son," he whispered, tears in his eyes. "I should have been there for you." In the days that followed, Matteo did not leave the hospital. He refused to leave Luca's side, even when Sofia showed up with urgent documents to sign. His priority now was his son. Nothing else mattered. It was during this period that Matteo met Natalia, the nurse responsible for Luca's care, a woman with a kind face and lively eyes who treated the boy with special affection. "He's getting better quickly," she told Matteo as she checked Luca's vital signs. "Children have an incredible capacity for recovery." "Thank you for taking such good care of him," Matteo replied, noticing the nurse's dedication. "It's my job," she smiled. "Besides, my daughter Leah is his classmate at school. She's been asking about him every day." Matteo vaguely remembered Luca mentioning a friend named Leah a few times. Would it be possible for her to visit? "I think it would do Luca good to see a friendly face his own age." Natalia nodded. "Sure, I can bring her tomorrow after school if that's okay with you." The next morning, when Luca finally woke up fully, the first thing he asked was about his Lego project. "Daddy, did you save my building?" he murmured weakly. Matteo felt a lump in his throat. The boy had been through a terrible trauma, and his concern was with the gift he had made for his father. "Don't worry about that now, son. The important thing is that you're okay." Luca looked disappointed. "It was supposed to be just like yours. I worked hard on it." Matteo stroked his son's hair. "We'll build another one together when you get out of here, I promise." The boy's eyes shone with a hope Matteo hadn't seen in a long time. "Really? Are you going to help me?" "True. I'm going to take a vacation and we're going to spend some time together, just the 2 of us." Meanwhile, in the partially destroyed Moretti mansion, investigator Suarez examined the evidence with his team. The source of the fire had been identified in the electrical system near Luca's room, but something didn't seem right. "Look at this," he said to a colleague, pointing to some markings. "It looks like the system has been tampered with. This wasn't a normal short circuit." "Are you thinking about arson?" Suarez nodded gravely. "We need to talk to Mr. Moretti about possible enemies." Back at the hospital, Luca received the promised visit. Leah timidly entered the room, bringing a book as a gift. "Hi, Luca," she said, approaching the bed. "I brought this so you wouldn't be bored." It was a new book about great constructions around the world. Luca smiled for the first time since the fire. "Thank you, Leah." Matteo watched the two's interaction with interest. There was something familiar about the girl's face that he couldn't quite place. Natalia noticed his intrigued look. "She looks a lot like her father," the nurse commented, although he was never present in her life. "Is it just you and her?" Matteo asked. Natalia nodded. "Yes, since I found out I was pregnant." He disappeared when I told him. Matteo felt a pang of guilt, remembering how he had neglected his own son, even though he was physically present. It must be difficult. "Sometimes," Natalia admitted, "but we have each other, and Leah is a blessing, so smart and determined." As they talked, Matteo didn't notice the man watching them from the hallway. Stefan Braus was there, carrying a bouquet of flowers, apparently coming to pay a courtesy call. His look, however, was not one of concern, but of calculation, as he watched Matteo interacting with Natalia and the children. "So this is the nurse," he muttered to himself, before walking away unnoticed. The next day, Matteo was finally able to take Luca home. Since the mansion was uninhabitable, he had rented a temporary apartment in the same neighborhood. It was smaller and simpler than what they were used to, but it seemed more welcoming. "I like it here," Luca commented, exploring the new space. "It feels more like a real home." Matteo smiled, realizing how his relentless pursuit of greatness had created a home that didn't feel like home to his son. "Let's stay here until we find a new place that we both like, okay?" Luca nodded excitedly. "And can we invite Leah to play here?" "Of course," Matteo replied, realizing how important that friendship seemed to his son. Matteo's phone rang. It was Detective Suarez. "Mr. Moretti, we need to talk about the fire. We found evidence that suggests sabotage." Matteo moved away so that Luca wouldn't hear. "He is sure?" "Absolutely. Someone wanted to harm you, Mr. Moretti, and I fear they may try again." 3 weeks after the fire, Matteo's life had changed dramatically. The powerful businessman who had lived for his work now spent most of his time with his son, trying to make up for lost years. The temporary apartment became a refuge for both of them, away from the formalities of the old mansion. "Dad, look!" Luca exclaimed, showing the Lego construction they had been working on together for the past few days. "It's even better than the last one." Matteo smiled, feeling a simple happiness that he had forgotten. They were rebuilding not only the model of the Moretti Empreendimentos building, but also their relationship. "It's amazing, son. You have a talent for this." The phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Sophia, his assistant. "Matteo, I'm sorry to bother you, but the Chinese investors are insisting on talking to you. They're threatening to withdraw their support for the Rio project if you don't show up for tomorrow's meeting." Matteo hesitated, looking at Luca. "Sophia, you can represent the company in this meeting. I trust your judgment." "But Matteo, they specified that they want you personally. It's a contract worth millions. Then reschedule for next week. Right now I have more important priorities." As he hung up, Matteo noticed Luca's surprised look. "What happened?" he asked his son. "You never postpone meetings," the boy replied. "You always say that business can't wait." Matteo sat down next to his son, placing his hand on his shoulder. "Some things are more important than business, Luca. It took me a while to realize that, but now I know." That afternoon, Matteo took Luca for a walk in the park, something he hadn't done since Isabel was alive. While they were walking, Detective Suarez called again. "Mr. Moretti, we have some news about the case. Can we meet today?" "Sure. I'm at the park with my son. Could we talk here?" "Perfect. I'll be there in half an hour." While Luca was playing on the playground, Matteo spotted the investigator approaching. "Any news?" he asked as soon as Suarez sat down next to him. "Yes, and they are worrying. We have confirmed that the fire was caused by a fire. Someone sabotaged the mansion's electrical system, but in a very sophisticated way. Whoever did it had advanced technical knowledge." Matteo felt a shiver run down his spine. "Any idea who it could be?" We are investigating, but we would like you to think about possible enemies. Someone who would have reasons to harm you. Matteo thought for a moment, and the image of Stefan Braus appeared in his mind. There is someone, a competitor, Stefan Braus from Braus Construction. We had a strange encounter on the day of the fire. Suarez wrote down the name. We will investigate. In the meantime, I recommend caution. Hire additional security for yourself and your son. As the investigator walked away, Matteo spotted a familiar figure walking through the park. Natalia, the nurse, accompanied by her daughter, Leah. Luca saw them too and ran towards them. "Leah, Natalia," the boy called, excited. The two turned around, surprised by the chance encounter. "Hello, Luca. How are you feeling?" Natalia asked with a genuine smile. "Much better. Dad and I are building a giant Lego building." Matteo approached, greeting Natalia and Leah. "What a nice coincidence," he commented. "Luca has been talking about you a lot." "We were just enjoying our Sunday off," Natalia explained. "It's rare to get a whole day off at the hospital." "Have you had lunch yet?" Matteo asked. "We could eat something together if you don't have plans." The spontaneous invitation surprised even Matteo. He was not one to make friends easily, always maintaining strictly professional relationships. But something about that small family attracted him, perhaps the simplicity and joy they shared, even with few resources. "That would be great," Leah replied before her mother could say anything. "Can we, Mother?" Natalia hesitated briefly before nodding. "Sure, why not?" At a restaurant near the park, the four shared a pleasant meal. Matteo noticed how different Luca seemed around Leah, more talkative and confident. The children chatted excitedly about a school project while the adults watched them. "Your son is very intelligent," Natalia commented. "And he has a huge heart. I think she takes after her mother in that," Matteo replied with a melancholy smile. "Isabel was like that, generous and brilliant." "Leah told me about your wife. I'm sorry." Matteo nodded, silently thanking him. "What about you?" he asked after a moment. "Leah mentioned that it's just the two of you." Natalia sighed, looking at her daughter, who was now showing something on her cell phone to Luca. "Yes. Her father, well, he never knew he had a daughter, actually." Matteo frowned in confusion. "Never knew. We had a brief relationship when I was a nursing student. By the time I found out I was pregnant, he had disappeared. I was never able to track him down to tell him." Something in Natalia's story piqued Matteo's curiosity. "When was that?" "Leah and Luca look like they're the same age." "Yes, they were born in the same month, actually. Leah turned 9 in May." Matteo did a quick mental calculation. 9 years ago in May, he was completely focused on expanding the company, and Isabel was pregnant with Luca. A strange idea began to form in his mind, but he quickly dismissed it as absurd. As the afternoon drew to a close, Matteo suggested they meet again. Luca would love to have Leah as a guest at home. "Maybe next week." "That would be wonderful," Natalia replied. "Leah only talks about Luca lately." As they said their goodbyes, Matteo couldn't help but notice how much the two children looked alike when they smiled. There was something familiar about Leah that continued to intrigue him. The next morning, Matteo took Luca to school and then headed to the company for the first time in weeks. Sophia greeted him with a stack of urgent documents. "Matteo, I'm glad you're back. Things are a little chaotic without you. I just came to put a few things in order," he explained. "I won't be back in full yet. But the project, Sophia, I need to count on you more than ever. I want you to temporarily take over the operational management of the company. I know you are capable." The assistant looked at him, surprised. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. You know this company as well as I do. Besides, there's something important I need to take care of personally." Matteo went into his office and closed the door. On the computer, he began researching Stefan Braus, trying to understand if there was any connection between his former colleague and the fire in his house. He discovered that Braus Construções had lost several contracts to Moretti Empreendimentos in recent years, including a particularly lucrative one in the countryside. His phone rang. It was an unknown number, Moretti speaking. "Hello, Matteo." Stefan Braus's voice sounded on the other end. I heard about your misfortune. Terrible what happened. Matteo felt a chill. What do you want, Stefan? Just to express my condolences and to say that my offer of partnership still stands. In a time of crisis like this, you may need allies. I'm not interested in your partnership. Are you sure? Stefan's tone was almost threatening. Sometimes, fate puts us in interesting situations. You never know when secrets from the past might come back to light. Matteo felt his anger rise. Are you threatening me, Stefan? Not at all. Just offering a helping hand. By the way, how is your son? And that dedicated nurse, what was her name again? Natalia. Matteo's blood ran cold. How did Stefan know about Natalia? Stay away from my family, he warned, his voice low and dangerous. Stefan laughed lightly. Family? Interesting how important that concept has become to you now, Matteo. So different from the man I knew years ago who would sacrifice anything for success. People change, Stefan. Do they really change? Stefan asked. Or do they just discover truths that were hidden? Before Matteo could respond, Stefan hung up, leaving him flustered and confused. What was his former colleague trying to insinuate? And how did he know about Natalia? Matteo put away his phone and ran his hands over his face. There was something going on, a plot he couldn't fully comprehend. He decided it was time to dig deeper into not only the fire, but also the connections between Stefan, his past, and the strange coincidences that were beginning to appear. As he left the office, Matteo passed Sophia's desk. I need you to do me a favor. Get everything you can on Stefan Braus, especially about the last 10 years. Is there a problem, Matteo? I hope not, but we need to be prepared. The days that followed were apparently normal for Matteo and Luca. The businessman had hired additional security, but he tried to maintain a calm routine so as not to alarm his son. Leah's visits to the Moretti apartment became frequent, bringing a joy that had long been lacking in the family. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, while the children played in the living room, Matteo and Natalia chatted on the balcony. I've never seen Luca so happy, Matteo said, watching his son through the glass door. He's always been so reserved. Leah has also changed since she met her son, Natalia replied. Before, she was very suspicious of other children. I think that because she grew up without a father, she always felt different. Matteo took a sip of coffee, carefully choosing his next words. Natalia, I know this is personal, but could you tell me more about Leah's father? The nurse looked at him, surprised by the question. Why do you want to know? I don't know for sure, Matteo admitted. Maybe because I see how your story affected Leah, just as Isabel's. Absence affected Luca, even if in different ways. Natalia sighed, looking at her daughter through the door. I met Marco during my senior year of college. He was doing a specialization at the hospital where I was interning. It was intense but brief. When I found out I was pregnant, he had already left for abroad. Have you never tried to find him? At first, yes, but then she paused. There were complications during the birth. Leah was born prematurely with some health problems. My priority became taking care of her. And when I finally had time to look for you again, it didn't seem so important anymore. Matteo felt a strange uneasiness. Which hospital? Where was Leah born? At St. Eric's, Natalia replied, frowning. Why? Luca was born. There too, Matteo said, almost to himself. The same month from what you said. Natalia watched him curiously. Yes, but that's not that unusual. It's one of the largest maternity hospitals in the city. Matteo agreed, but something about the coincidence continued to bother him. He decided to change the subject. How is Helena? Have you heard from her? Yes, I went to visit her yesterday. At her sister's house. She's recovering well, but she's still quite shaken by the fire. Inside the apartment, Luca and Leah were sitting on the floor, looking through an album of old photographs. Is this you, baby? Leah asked, pointing to a photo. Yes, with my mother, Luca replied with a sad smile. She was beautiful, wasn't she? Leah nodded, running her fingers over the photo. Very much. You look like her. Everyone says that, Luca turned. The page. This one is from the day I came home from the hospital. The photo showed a younger Matteo holding a newborn baby in his arms, with Isabel beside him in the hospital bed. A bracelet was visible on the baby's wrist. "What are those numbers on your bracelet?" Leah asked, curious. "I don't know. I think all babies get one at the hospital." "I have one saved too," Leah exclaimed excitedly. "Mommy kept it in a special case along with a lock of my baby hair." Luca turned a few more pages, arriving at more recent photos, where he appeared alone or with his father at business events. "Isn't your mother in any of these?" asked Leah. "No," Luca replied, looking down. "She got sick when I was 3. Leah placed her hand over his, in an instinctive gesture of comfort. "I'm sorry. At least you have your father. I never knew mine." "Is he gone?" "Mum says he doesn't know I exist." The children were silent for a moment, united by their different losses. "Luca," Leah said finally, "have you ever felt like something was wrong, even though you didn't know what it was?" The boy nodded. "Slowly? Sometimes, especially when I'm alone at night. Me too. Like a piece of the puzzle is missing." On the balcony, Matteo received a call from investigator Suarez. "Mr. Moretti, we have important information. Can we meet today?" "Sure. I'm at home with my son and some friends. Could it be later?" "Actually, it's urgent. It has to do with Stefan Braus." Matteo felt his heart race. "I'll be at your office in an hour." When he hung up, he noticed Natalia's worried look. "Did something happen?" "Nothing serious," he lied. "Just a pending company matter." "I see," she said, though her tone suggested she didn't entirely believe it. "I think it's time we went. Leah has piano lessons tomorrow morning." "You can stay for dinner," Matteo suggested quickly. "Luca would be happy, and I shouldn't be long." Natalia hesitated before accepting. "Okay, but don't worry about us if you need to be away longer." When Matteo arrived at the police station, Suarez was waiting for him in his office with a serious expression. "Thank you for coming so quickly, Mr. Moretti. We have discovered something disturbing about Stefan Braus." The investigator opened a folder with documents and photographs. "Over. The past 3 months, Braus has made several bank transfers to this man," he said, pointing to a photo of a rough-looking individual. "Sergio Mendes, a security systems specialist with a criminal record for electronic fraud. We believe he was the one who sabotaged the electrical system in your mansion." Matteo felt anger rise within him. "So Stefan really is behind the fire?" "The evidence points to that, but there's more." Suarez slid another document across the table. "We found this in Braus's records. 9 years ago, he worked briefly as a consultant at St. Eric's Hospital." "The hospital?" "Where my son was born," Suarez nodded. "Exactly. And coincidentally, he's been making several visits to the hospital in the last few months, supposedly for a renovation project." "I don't understand. What would be the connection?" "We don't know yet, but we think he's looking for something in the hospital files. Something related to you or your family." Matteo remembered his conversation with Stefan on the phone, his hints about secrets from the past. "I need access to those files," Matteo said suddenly, "the birth records from 9 years ago." "I can arrange that, but why? I have a feeling something Stefan said was about secrets from the past." Meanwhile, at the Moretti apartment, Natalia was helping the children prepare a cake in the kitchen. Luca was mixing the batter when his cell phone rang. "It's my dad," he said, answering excitedly. "Hi, Dad, we're making a chocolate cake." "That's great, son," Matteo replied, trying to sound casual. "Listen, I need you to do something for me. Remember that blue box we brought from the mansion, with your birth documents?" "Yes, it's in your closet. Can you ask Natalia to find it for me? It's important." Luca passed on the message, and Natalia, a little confused, went to Matteo's room. She found the box without difficulty, and at Matteo's request over the phone examined Luca's birth documents. "I'm looking at the certificate, the vaccination card, the hospital bracelet," she listed. "The bracelet!" Matteo exclaimed. "Can you tell me the identification number on it?" Natalia read the numbers printed on the old hospital bracelet, RN2351B. There was a long silence on the line. "Matteo? Is everything okay?" Yes, thank you, Natalia. I'll be home soon. In Suarez's office, Matteo was pale. I need to go to São Eric Hospital now. It's almost 8 o'clock at night, Mr. Moretti. It doesn't matter. I know the director. He will see me. As he drove toward the hospital, Matteo tried to organize his thoughts. An unsettling suspicion began to form in his mind, something so absurd that he could barely consider it. But the coincidences were too many. Leah and Luca were born in the same hospital, in the same month. Stefan was working there at the same time, and now returning to investigate old records, the insinuations about secrets from the past. At the hospital, Director Dr. Schneider welcomed him into his office, surprised by the late visit. Matteo, what a surprise! What can I do for you at this hour? I need your help, Marco. It's urgent and confidential. The director nodded, indicating a chair for Matteo. Sure, anything. I need to look at birth records from 9 years ago, specifically May. My son Luca and another child, Dr. Schneider frowned. May I ask why? I think something serious may have happened, possibly a baby swap. The director turned pale. Matteo, that is a very serious accusation. I'm not accusing anyone, Marco, but I need to know the truth. Please. Dr. Schneider led Matteo to a private room in the back of the hospital where the oldest records were stored. These are the files from May 9 years ago, the director said, pointing to several labeled boxes. But, Matteo, I need you to understand, even if you find something suspicious, it doesn't necessarily mean there was a switch. Matteo nodded impatiently. I see. Let's look for it. For nearly 2 hours, Matteo pored over dozens of birth records comparing identification numbers, birth times and birth data. Finally, he found what he was looking for, a folder with Isabel Moretti's name and another with Natalia Romano's. Here, he murmured, opening the 2 folders side by side. Records showed that Isabel had given birth to a girl at 3:42 p.m. on May 15th, while Natalia had given birth to a boy at 3:51 a.m. the same day. Both births took place in the same operating room, with the same medical team. This can't be, Matteo whispered, feeling a chill run down his spine. Luca is a boy, and Leah is a girl. Dr. Schneider examined the documents with growing concern. Let me check something, he said, typing quickly on a nearby computer. I'll check the electronic records from the time. Additional information about the births appeared on the computer screen, including the identifications from the hospital bracelets. RN2351A for Isabel's baby, read the director. And RN2351B for Natalia's baby. Matteo felt his heart skip a beat. RN2351B, that doesn't make sense. Luca's bracelet has that number on it. But according to these records, RN2351B was the identifier of Natalia's son, a boy, the E. Director replied, confused. And what about Isabel's baby, my wife? Matteo asked, his voice barely audible. A girl. RN2351A. Matteo closed his eyes, feeling the world spin. The suspicion that had seemed so absurd now appeared to be a real possibility. Luca was not his biological son, and Leah could be his real daughter. We need DNA tests, he said finally, to confirm. Dr. Schneider placed his hand on Matteo's shoulder. Let's take it easy. These records are old. There may be typing errors, confusion in the data. No, Matteo insisted. It's possible the babies were switched, Marco. I need to know the truth. Even if it is true, are you prepared for the consequences? Asked the director. We are talking about children who have grown up for 9 years in families they consider their own. Matteo didn't respond immediately. The enormity of the situation was beginning to weigh on him. If Luca wasn't his biological son and Leah was, what would that mean for all of them? I need to think about it, he said finally. But first I'm going to need these documents, and your complete discretion in this matter. When Matteo returned to the apartment, it was already past midnight. To his surprise, Natalia was still there, asleep on the couch. Luca and Leah had improvised a camp in the boys' room, with sheets hanging up to form a hut. Matteo watched the children sleeping peacefully side by side. How had he not noticed the physical similarities between Leah and Isabel before? The same, almond-shaped eyes, the same face shape. And now that he thought about it, Luca had little in common with him physically, but he did share with Natalia the same curly hair and the same smile. Natalia woke up to the sound of his footsteps. "Matteo?" she murmured, settling into the couch. "Sorry, I fell asleep waiting. The kids insisted on camping and ended up falling asleep." "No problem," he replied, sitting down in an armchair across from her. "Thank you for staying." Natalia studied his face for a moment. "Did something happen?" "You look shaken." Matteo hesitated. Should he tell her his suspicions or wait until he was absolutely sure? He decided he needed time to process everything before bringing Natalia into this complicated situation. "Just tired. It's been a long day." "I see. Well, I think I should wake Leah up and we can go home." "Please stay," Matteo said suddenly. "It's late and the children are sleeping so peacefully. We have a guest room." Natalia seemed surprised by the invitation, but ended up accepting. "Okay, thank you." The next morning, Matteo woke up early, after a night of virtually no sleep. He found Natalia in the kitchen making coffee. "Good morning," she said, with a smile. "I hope you don't mind. Luca told me where things were." "Not at all." "Please feel free." Matteo poured himself some coffee and sat at the table, watching Natalia. How would he tell her? How would he explain that their lives might be intertwined in ways neither of them had ever imagined? "Natalia," he began hesitantly, "there's something I need to ask you." She turned, noticing his serious tone. What it was. "You said that Leah was born at São Eric Hospital in the same month as Luca. Could you tell me the exact date?" "May 15th, she replied, puzzled. "Why?" "Luca was also born that day," Matteo said, feeling his heart race. "In Iwanon, the same hospital." Natalia smiled. What a coincidence. No wonder they get along so well. "Yes, coincidence," Matteo murmured. "Natalia, do you remember the number on Leah's identification bracelet? The one the hospital puts on? Newborns?" The nurse frowned, increasingly confused by the questions. "I think so. I kept it in a little box with other mementos of her as a baby. It was something like RN2351 and a letter. A, I think. Why are you asking that?" Matteo felt a shiver run through his body. RN2351A. The code that, according to the records, belonged to Isabel's baby. A girl. "Natalia, last night I was at São Eric Hospital reviewing some old records." "Records? What records?" Before Matteo could respond, his cell phone rang. It was Sophia. "Matteo, sorry to call so early, but it's urgent. Stefan Braus is here in the office, insisting on speaking to you. He says it's about your son." Matteo felt his anger rise. "Tell him I'll be there in 30 minutes. When he hung up, he noticed Natalia watching him with growing concern. "Matteo, what's going on?" He took a deep breath, deciding he couldn't put off the conversation any longer. "Natalia, I think there may have been a baby switch at the hospital. Luca and Leah. They may not be who we think they are." The color drained from the nurse's face. "What are you talking about?" "Hospital records show that Isabel gave birth to a girl, and you gave birth to a boy. The identification bracelets that were supposed to be with each baby appear to have been switched." Natalia shook her head in denial. "No, that's impossible. Leah is my daughter. I breastfed her. I took care of her from the first second." I know, Matteo said, trying to calm her. "And Luca is my son in every way that matters, but we need to find out the truth." At that moment they heard laughter coming from the hallway. Luca and Leah entered the kitchen, still in their pajamas, completely oblivious to the tension between the adults. "Good morning," Luca exclaimed. "Can we have coffee in the cabin?" "We made invitations for you too," Leah added, showing 2 colored pieces of paper. Matteo and Natalia exchanged glances. How could they explain to 2 9-year-olds that their lives could be about to change completely? "Of course you can," Natalia replied, forcing a smile. "I'll prepare a tray for you." As the children excitedly returned to their makeshift camp, Matteo approached Natalia. "I need to go to the office now. Stefan Braus is there, and I think he knows something about all this. I'll go with you, Natalia declared. It is not necessary. If this involves my daughter, then it is absolutely necessary, she interrupted, determination in her eyes. Matteo nodded. You're right. But what will we do with the children? I can call my neighbor to stay with them for a few hours. She always helps when I have shifts. At the Moretti Empreendimentos office, Stefan Braus waited in the meeting room, appearing calm, which only increased Matteo's fury. Matteo, and this must be Natalia Romano, Stefan exclaimed as the two entered. What a pleasure to finally meet you in person. What do you want, Stefan? Matteo asked bluntly. Straight to the point, as always, Stefan smiled. I came to talk about a family matter, or maybe I should say, families. You know about the exchange, Matteo accused. Trade, Stefan feigned. Innocence. What trade? Stop playing games, Matteo slammed the table. You were in the hospital recently, going through old records. Stefan leaned back in his chair, assessing the two of them. I see you've done your homework. Matteo. Yes, I've discovered something quite interesting in St. Eric's archives, something that could shake the Moretti Empire to its foundations. What is he talking about? Natalia asked, confused. He knows about the possible baby switch, Matteo explained. Luca and Leah might have been switched at the hospital when they were born. Natalia put her hand over her mouth, shocked. And why would you be interested in that? She asked Stefan. Why? Stefan laughed. Because the great Matteo Moretti, the real estate tycoon who built his empire by crushing smaller competitors, is not the father of his heir. And the true Moretti heiress grew up in poverty, unaware of her birthright. So that's it, Matteo said with contempt. Revenge. You want to destroy me, to get at my family. You destroyed my company 5 years ago when you stole the Crystal Resort project from me, Stefan accused. Now it's my turn to destroy yours. I didn't steal anything. I won that bid honestly. Honestly? Stefan laughed bitterly. You bribed government officials. You manipulated environmental assessments. I lost everything because of that project, Matteo. My marriage, my reputation. Natalia watched the exchange of accusations with growing horror. And what do you intend to do with this information? She asked finally. Stefan looked at her with a calculating smile. Make it public, of course. Imagine the tabloids. Tycoon raises nurse's son while real heiress lives in poverty. It will be the scandal of the year. You don't care. About the children, Natalia accused. The trauma this would cause. And Matteo cared about me when he destroyed my life? Stefan retorted. Matteo took a threatening step towards Stefan, but Natalia placed a hand on his arm, restraining him. What do you really want, Stefan? She asked calmly. It's not just publicity. There must be something more. Stefan smiled, pleased to finally get to the point. Insightful, Natalia. Yes, there is something else. I want the Horizonte project, he said, looking directly at Matteo. That residential and commercial complex you are developing downtown. Transfer it to my company, along with 50% of the shares of Moretti Empreendimentos, and your little secret will be safe with me. You're crazy, Matteo replied. That's worth billions. And how much is your son worth, Matteo? Or, should I say someone else's son? Stefan leaned forward. How much is the emotional stability of these children worth? They would be hounded by the press, turned into sensational news. Matteo felt his blood boil in his veins. Stefan was using innocent children as a tool of blackmail. We need time to think, Natalia intervened, realizing that the situation could escalate quickly. This is not a simple decision. Sure, Stefan agreed, standing up. You have 48 hours. After that, the story goes to the press. After Stefan left, Matteo collapsed into a chair, running his hands over his face in despair. I can't believe he's doing this, he muttered, using children for revenge. Natalia sat beside him, equally shaken. What will we do, Matteo? We need to protect Luca and Leah. First, we need to confirm that this is really true, he replied. We will do the DNA test today. What if it's true? Natalia asked, her voice trembling. What if Luca is my biological son Leah is your daughter. The question hung between them like a heavy cloud. It was the first time they had fully verbalized the possibility. I don't know, Matteo admitted, but I know I love Luca, no matter what a test says. He's my son in every way that matters. I feel the same way about Leah, Natalia said, tears in her eyes. She's my whole life. At that moment, Natalia's phone rang. It was her neighbor, saying that the children were worried and asking when their parents would be back. Tell them we're on our way, Natalia replied, looking at Matteo. We have to go back, and we need to decide what to tell them. Nothing yet, Matteo decided. Not until we know for sure. On the way back to the apartment, they both remained silent, each lost in their own thoughts. The possibility that their families could be intertwined in such a deep and unexpected way was overwhelming. In the apartment, they found Luca and Leah watching an animated film, surrounded by pillows and blankets from the cabin they had built. You guys took a while, Luca exclaimed, running to hug his father. We made popcorn, but we ran out. Can we make more? Leah approached Natalia, noticing her worried expression. Is everything okay, Mum? Natalia forced a smile, running her hand through her daughter's hair. Yes, dear. I'm just a little tired. Matteo and Natalia exchanged glances, knowing they needed to act quickly. Stefan's threat loomed over them and time was running out. How about we all go to the mall today? Matteo suggested, surprising the children. We can have lunch there and then go to the movies. Really? Luca could hardly believe it. His father never suggested spontaneous outings. Seriously, Matteo confirmed. Natalia and Leah too, if they want. Leah's eyes sparkled. Can we, Mum? Natalia nodded, understanding Matteo's plan. The mall had a testing clinic where they could discreetly collect material for DNA testing. During the outing, Matteo and Natalia tried to maintain normality despite the emotional storm they were facing. They now observed the children with new eyes, noticing similarities and differences that had previously gone unnoticed. Late in the afternoon, while Luca and Leah were having fun in a play area, Matteo and Natalia managed to discreetly go to the clinic and request the test. The results would be ready in 24 hours, half the time frame given by Stefan. What will we do if it's true? Natalia asked softly as they watched the children playing in the distance. We can't give in to Stefan's blackmail, Matteo replied. I have a friend in the public prosecutor's office. Maybe we can charge him with extortion. But then the story will come out anyway, Natalia pondered. And the children, I know, Matteo sighed. It's a nightmare with no easy way out. That night, Natalia and Leah stayed at Matteo's apartment again. The children were exhausted after their day of fun and fell asleep quickly. The adults, however, stayed up late, chatting on the balcony. You know what scares me the most? Natalia confessed, looking at the city lights. It's not the possibility that Leah isn't my biological daughter. It's the possibility of losing her. Matteo looked at her with understanding. I'm not taking Leah away from you, Natalia, even if the tests confirm that she is, he hesitated, my biological daughter. And Luca? She asked, her voice breaking. Would you keep him, even though you don't share the same blood? Without a doubt, he's my son. Nothing will change that. A comfortable silence settled between them, a mutual understanding born of the crisis they faced. How do we tell them? Natalia asked finally. If it's true, how do we explain something so complex to 9-year-olds? Honestly, but very gently, Matteo replied. They are intelligent. They will understand. But we need to make sure they know that nothing changes in our love for them. The next morning, Investigator Suarez called Matteo. Mr. Moretti, we have new information about Stefan Braus. He was involved in more than just investigating hospital records. We found connections between him and a maternity ward employee who worked there 9 years ago. Who? Matteo asked, feeling his heart race. A nursing technician named Paolo Novak. He was fired from the hospital for negligence a few years later, but he was on duty the night his son was born. Were you able to locate him? Yes, he lives in another city now. And here's the interesting part. He received a large sum of money from a shell company linked to Braus recently. Matteo felt his anger rise. He's buying witnesses. He wants to fabricate a story. Possibly. We're monitoring Brous now. If he tries anything illegal, we'll have evidence. When he hung up, Matteo found Natalia in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. New information? She asked, noticing his expression. Matteo told her about Paolo Novak and the suspicions that Stefan might be fabricating evidence. Does that mean the exchange might not have happened? Natalia asked with a glimmer of hope. Or it could mean that it happened, but not by accident, Matteo replied darkly, and Stefan is trying to cover up something worse. At that moment, Matteo's phone rang again. It was the clinic, informing him that the DNA test results were ready ahead of schedule. Let's go get them now, Matteo decided, looking at Natalia. We need to know the truth. The children were still asleep when they left. At the clinic, the doctor received them with a serious expression. Mr. Moretti, Mrs. Romano, we analyzed the samples as requested. He opened a folder containing the results. The tests confirm with 99.9% certainty that Luca Moretti has no genetic link with Matteo Moretti. Natalia gasped, holding onto the chair. And Leah, continued the doctor, presents genetic compatibility with Mr. Moretti, consistent with the father-daughter relationship. Matteo closed his eyes, feeling the impact of the confirmation. Even though he suspected it, even though he had seen the hospital records, hearing the scientific truth was devastating. Is there a possibility of error? Natalia asked, her voice trembling. With that percentage of certainty, it's virtually impossible. Would you like to read the full report? Matteo picked up the papers mechanically, barely able to focus on the words. It was true. Luca was not his biological son, and Leah, the girl who had grown up in modest circumstances, without a father present, was his daughter by blood. What do we do now? Natalia whispered, when they were back in the car. Matteo looked at his watch. They had less than 24 hours before Stefan made good on his threat to expose everything. Let's get the children and take them to a safe place, he decided, far from the city, away from the press. I know a country house where we can stay while we decide what to do next. And Stefan, I won't give in to his blackmail, Matteo said with determination. I'll face him, but first we need to protect the children. Matteo's country house was 2 hours from the capital, surrounded by a vast green area and protected by a discreet but efficient security system. As he drove along the winding road with Natalia at his side and the children asleep in the back seat, he tried to gather his thoughts. They look so calm, Natalia commented, looking back, completely unaware of the hurricane that's coming. Matteo nodded, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Let us preserve this peace for as long as possible. When they arrived at the house, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with orange tones. Luca and Leah woke up, amazed by the place. Are we going to live here now? Luca asked, looking at the wood and stone house with its wide balconies. For now, yes, Matteo replied, helping them with their bags. Consider an early vacation. But what about school? Asked Leah, always responsible. We'll find a way. Natalia smiled, stroking his hair. A few days won't hurt. After settling the children, Matteo and Natalia sat on the porch, watching Luca and Leah explore the garden. Night was beginning to fall, and with it, the deadline given by Stefan was approaching. We need to tell them, Natalia said finally, before they hear about it from other people. Matteo reluctantly agreed. Yes, but how? Honestly, as you said yourself, but making it clear that nothing changes in our feelings for them. That night after dinner, while the children were playing a board game in the living room, Matteo received a call from investigator Suarez. Mr. Moretti, we found Paolo Novak. He confessed. Confessed to what exactly? Who was paid 9 years ago to change the baby's bracelets? But not by Stefan Brous. Matteo felt a chill. Then by whom? There was a pause on the line. By Marco Schneider. Marco, the hospital director. Matteo could hardly believe. To us, yes. According to Novak, Schneider had an old debt with his family, something related to his father's business. He saw an opportunity for revenge when his wife and Miss Romano gave birth on the same day. The revelation hit Matteo like a bolt of lightning. Marco Schneider was the son of a businessman his father had ruined decades ago, an ancient story he barely remembered. The baby switch was no accident, but a deliberate act of revenge. Did they manage to arrest Schneider? Not yet, he has disappeared. But we have issued a warrant and are monitoring airports and bus stations. As for Stefan Braus, it seems he only recently discovered the truth and tried to use it for his own benefit. After hanging up, Matteo reported everything to Natalia, who listened in horror. How could someone do something so cruel? Use innocent babies for revenge? Hate blinds people, Matteo replied bitterly. But the important thing now is that we know the truth, and we need to tell the children. The next morning, after a restless night, Matteo and Natalia gathered the children in the living room. It was the moment of truth. Luca, Leah, we have something very important to tell you, Matteo began, sitting down in front of them. Is it something bad? Asked Luca, already noticing the seriousness on his father's face. It's not bad, it's just different from what we thought, Natalia replied gently. In simple and direct words, they explained that when the two were born, there was a mix-up at the hospital. Because of this mix-up, Luca went home with Matteo and Leah with Natalia. But does that mean you're not my father? Luca asked, tears in his eyes. I am your father, Luca, Matteo replied firmly. In every way that really matters. I raised you, I loved you. I was with you through every important moment. That doesn't change. And you're my mother, Leah asked Natalia, her voice small and fragile. Of course I am, my love. I will always be your mother, no matter what a test says. The children looked confused, trying to process the information. So, biologically speaking, Luca said slowly, using an expression he had recently learned. You're my father, he asked Natalia. I am your biological mother, yes, she replied softly, and Matteo is Leah's biological father. A heavy silence fell over the room as the children absorbed the revelation. Does this mean we have to switch houses? Leah finally asked, fear in her voice. Do I have to move in with you? She looked at Matteo. No, my dear, he replied quickly. No one is going to change houses. You will stay with the people who have always taken care of you, who you know as your parents. But we want you to know the truth, Natalia added. And we also want you to know that we can be a different family, but still a family. What do you mean? Dan asked Luca. Well, now that we know this, we can spend more time together, all of us, Matteo explained. You two will be able to get to know each other better as biological siblings, and Natalia and I will also be part of each other's lives. The children looked at each other, processing the idea of being siblings. I always wanted a brother, Luca said finally with a small smile. And I always wanted a bigger family, Leah added. In the days that followed, the new reality gradually settled in. The children, with the resilience typical of their age, adapted surprisingly well, asking occasional questions and establishing a new dynamic with each other, no longer just as friends, but as newly discovered siblings. Matteo received news that Marco Schneider had been captured trying to leave the country and would now face justice for his actions. Stefan Braus, for his part, withdrew his threats after being confronted with the possibility of being indicted for extortion. A week after they arrived at the country house, Matteo found Natalia sitting alone on the porch, watching the stars. What are you thinking about? He asked, joining her. How life takes strange turns, she replied. 2 weeks ago we were strangers. Now we share children and a secret that has changed our lives. Matteo nodded, looking up at the starry sky. You know, I've been thinking a lot about family these past few days, about what it really means. And what did you conclude? Family is not defined by blood, but by love, by the choice to be there, he replied. Luca is my son even if we don't share the same DNA. And Leah, well, I hope I get the chance to get to know her better, to be a part of her life in some way. Natalia smiled softly. She's already asking questions about you. She wants to know what you were like when you were young if she looks like you. And does it look like it? Very much. He has your eyes, your smile. They were silent for a moment, contemplating the new path that opened up ahead. "What do we do now?" Natalia finally asked. "When do we get back to the capital?" "I think we should follow the children's example," Matteo replied. "Adapt, one day at a time, build something new together." "An extended family?" "Exactly. We don't have to follow traditional models. We can create our own model based on what's best for Luca and Leah." 2 months later, life had found a new rhythm. Matteo and Luca remained in their apartment, but spent weekends at the country house, where Natalia and Leah often met them. The children flourished in the new dynamic, enjoying the time together and the attention of the adults. Matteo, in turn, drastically reduced his workload, delegating more responsibilities to Sofia, who proved to be an exceptional CEO. Natalia was given a better position at the hospital, with more flexible hours, allowing her more time with her daughter. One Sunday afternoon, while the children swam in the country house's pool under the supervision of Helena, who had fully recovered from the fire, Matteo and Natalia walked through the garden. "Luca asked me yesterday if I was his girlfriend," Natalia commented with a shy smile. Matteo laughed. "And what did you answer?" "That we are special friends, that we are getting to know each other better." "A diplomatically honest answer," Matteo observed, "and accurate." He stopped walking, turning to look her in the eyes. "You know, in the last few weeks, in the midst of all this chaos, I discovered something important." "What?" "I like being with you, not just because of the children, but because of you. Your strength, your kindness, your ability to face the impossible with grace." Natalia blushed slightly. "I like being with you too, Matteo. More than I expected." Joyful scream interrupted the moment. Leah was running towards them with Luca right behind. "Dad, Mom, come see what we built." The two adults looked at each other, surprised and moved by the naturalness with which the children now addressed them both with these terms. "Let's go," smiled Matteo, extending his hand to Natalia. She accepted the gesture, intertwining her fingers with his as they walked toward the children. They didn't know exactly what the future held, how this unconventional family would evolve, but they were willing to discover it together, one step at a time. As they watched Luca and Leah proudly display the sand castle they had built together, Matteo reflected on how sometimes the greatest tragedies can pave the way for the greatest gifts. The fire that had nearly destroyed his life had indirectly led to the discovery of this new family, this new chance at happiness. "What do you think?" Luca asked eagerly. "It's our home of the future. There's room for all of us." Matteo smiled, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in years. "It's perfect," he replied, looking not only at the sandcastle, but at the 3 people beside it. "Absolutely perfect."